Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Collective Clicks podcast. This is your host, Brandon Bateman, and today I'm going to be talking with Noah Parks for my team all about the advantages of paper lead versus PPC. How you doing today, Noah?
Good. How are you, Brandon?
Hey, good. Cannot complain. Excited to do another podcast with you. It has been 6 months, probably.
Yeah, it's been a little while. Yeah.
Yeah. For anybody that wants some context, right now, as we speak, I am looking out my window at Noah's house. Yet, despite that, he has made one appearance in the office in the past 6 months.
Is that it? Just one?
Maybe two. You come for our quarterly planning for sure.
I come for our leadership stuff.
So anyways, great to talk with you. You're the guy that every time you come into the office, people say, whoa, does he still work here? Which is kind of funny because to many of the people listening, they all probably know you fairly well because you're such a big piece of kind of our outward facing presence. So anyways, I'm super grateful to be here with you and I'm excited for a cool topic today, which is paper lead versus PPC.
Yeah.
So this is an exciting topic for me because I feel like there's a lot of misinformation going around about this. Now, obviously, before we get too far into this, right, we are a company that does PPC as a service for real estate investors. Noah works for that company as well, right? We're a little bit biased, so take it with a grain of salt. However, I think we're pretty level-headed, objective people, right? So I want to talk through like some of the different stuff we're saying. And spoiler, we're not going to say that one is better than the other. It really comes down to what your goals are. And
I had sales, so I may say one's better than the other.
All right, then I'll have to take the position of arguing for paper lead.
Okay, I'll take a well-rounded approach.
Okay, fair enough. So obviously this has been a big topic of discussion. I think what prompted the creation of this podcast is that a mutual friend and client of ours named Victor posted on Facebook, paper lead is a scam. Like prove me wrong or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the last few words were. And it started
a lively conversation.
Yes, a very lively conversation. And I noticed that a lot of the strong opinions kind of against paper lead were, in my opinion, a little bit unfounded, or maybe from like lack of understanding of those companies and how they work. But there's also a lot of truth to what was being said in that debate. And I think it's worth kind of visiting all those things. So a good place to start would be in your opinion, based on what you're hearing, because I know you're talking to probably like 7 or 8 investors every single day, which really adds up a lot over the course of a year and a half.
A lot of context of what's going on. I feel like it gives me a pretty good pulse, thumb on the pulse of the investor industry here.
Yeah, I mean, you hear the good, the bad, the ugly of all the marketing, and you're also really good at digging into why people feel that way about their marketing and what could be causing the result to be what it is and things like that, so you can better understand. So I honestly think you're one of the most qualified people in the world to speak on this subject just based on your exposure. In your opinion, what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of doing your own PPC as compared to buying leads from a paper lead provider?
Okay. I mean, honestly, I see advantages to both. One of the approaches that I pride myself on taking and having any kind of discovery conversation or just understanding where an investor is at in their marketing cycle, if you will, it tends to follow a pretty common thread, and that is new investors tend to take the route of marketing that provides the lowest barrier to entry, which is oftentimes outbound, right? But they hear all the upsides and all the good about inbound, and at some point they need to scale. And they need to be able to do so more efficiently than trying to scale their outbound operation. So then they inherently will look at paid. And when you look at the paid world, we've got the two options. We've got owning your own PPC campaign, running ads in Facebook, Instagram, Google, Bing, whatever it may be. And then we've got the pay per lead side of it. one of the things that I see quite often is that, younger investors who are newer into their marketing life cycle, they may not have the full budget to own their own PPC campaigns and have that fully managed for them, and so they turn toward the PPL side of things. And so there is an advantage there, is that you can start getting your toe in the water without having management fees and a full blown ad spend. Where they've got a 7 to 10K budget per month, something like that. They can buy the leads onesie twosie and get into it. So that's definitely one side of it that I see. Other people using it as a supplementary channel, have their own PPC, but they buy a few leads here and there just to get a couple extra coming in. So that's generally the situation that I see. And then as it runs its course, we start to get strong opinions on one side or the other of one channel versus the other. When in truth, I mean, they're very complementary.
Yeah, when I think of different ways to go about this, I think one good scale to compare these things on is what time frame is the result that you're looking for supposed to come in. As it relates to long-term strategies, that's going to be like SEO very much, right? As we move to more of a midterm strategy, I think your own PPC fits really well there because it does produce a more immediate result than SEO does. But at the same time, you have some level of ramp up. You have to gather data, figure out what's working, et cetera. And it's a little bit inflexible in the sense that you don't want to be like turning it on one day, off the next day, et cetera. Right. So you have to have some level of consistency. And then on like the far short term side, we have pay per lead. Like to give an example of where I recommended this to someone the other day, this was, so we do 6-month agreements with our clients. This is somebody who said, I don't want to do a 6-month agreement. So I had a conversation with them to see, what's motivating you. Turns out when we get to the bottom of it, of course, this is not any of the stuff that he said. This is all the stuff that was like underneath what he said, right? The real reason underneath everything was I have an office lease that's going to get more expensive in 3 months. And I need this to turn around before then, so I'm able to afford that office lease in 3 months. And I told him, forget your own PPC, go do PPL, especially because he said his cash conversion cycle was 90 days. And I'm like, there's no situation where spending any money on marketing right now is going to get you more money in 90 days because he was flipping properties. It's like, that just doesn't happen. But if it did happen, it would happen with PPL and you might have to wholesale. It's not like it couldn't happen with PPC. But when we're talking about just like jumping in the game and immediately being wherever you're going to end up, PPL is awesome. Right. Yeah. It's a fantastic short-term strategy. Turn it on today, turn it off tomorrow. And the reason is those companies that are generating the leads, they are consistent with their marketing, right? Because marketing as a whole has to be consistent. Right. You're just inconsistent in when you're buying things from them. But if they're not selling it to you, they're selling it to somebody else. So the underlying campaign has consistency, which makes it so that they kind of absorb that burden of consistency and you don't have to.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. Mm-hmm. I get into conversations and based on their situation, I've made recommendations to, a couple of the PPL companies that I'm close with and trust. And, no matter what, you hear both sides. And so you just do your best by the client and their situation and yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anything else that you notice in terms of pros and cons?
Yeah, I mean, the most common things that I hear, you hit very well on the pros. You can get into it quickly, you can get into it less expensively, if you will, and with less of a commitment to the process. The downside is you're not building your brand. And again, in the life cycle of an investor, that's going to become more important as they start to become more established. And so establishing your brand, having a branded campaign so you're showing up on anything close to your own name, all of those types of things are really important. The other, one of the things that's perceived as a pro to pay per lead is the ability to dispute leads that are spammy or, just don't exist. One of the things that I am hearing a lot lately, though, is that there's starting to get more and more pushback from some of the PPL companies on whether or not it is a situation where it can or should be refunded, whether it's truly a lead or not. And so that's one of the situations that I'm hearing quite frequently, and that's putting a sour taste in people's mouth, because it's one of the things that they really were attracted to in the early going, is that ability to dispute.
Yeah, it's actually a part of this Facebook post that we had mentioned at the beginning, is a few people mentioning, I was told that my dispute rate is too high and they shut down my account. But they were only disputing for the things that are listed that you can dispute for. Right. I think to really understand this, you kind of have to put yourself in the paper lead company's shoes. This is very similar to, let's just say you buy a product and you see that product has a 5-year warranty. But you have to register the product after you buy it to get that 5-year warranty, right? So how can that company afford to give the 5-year warranty? It's because they know that 75% of people don't register the product. So then they're not going to actually have to provide the 5-year warranty to those people, but it can still be something that influences their purchase decision in the beginning, because everybody just assumes that they're going to do everything right and they don't read the fine print, et cetera. Right. So then that company, their liability of that warranty is 25% of what it would have been otherwise, because it actually is only redeemed by 25% of people. That's a situation where breakage is what makes the deal, right? You offer a rebate incentive, for example, and who's going to actually mail in the rebate? Right. Not everybody, but who's going to be influenced by the fact that a rebate exists in their purchase decision and then assume that the future them is going to go through the pain of getting the rebate? Everybody, right? So it's you rely on breakage. The way a lot of these companies work is they track something called a dispute rate across their different clients. And they basically will increase your cost of leads as you increase the number of disputes that you're doing, right? So it feels like I don't have to pay for those leads that aren't good. But what they're basically relying on is you not being good at reporting those within 24 hours or whatever the requirement is. And then if you are really good at that, they just jack up your prices. So at the end of the day, it's like you're still you end up paying for it somehow.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I think that brings up an important point, and that is anybody who's going into the paid realm, it's part of the game. I mean, you can't join a basketball league and expect to play every game with perfect refereeing. I mean, there's going to be bad calls, there's going to be missed calls. It's just how it is. It's the nature of the beast. But when you look at things over time, you average things out, and all of that, the channel makes a lot of sense. But understanding that there's going to be some spam leads, there's going to be some listed leads. That's the nature of the beast. Now, in your own PPC campaigns, you can actively fight against that and try to reduce the amount of listed leads and spam, which is something that we do, I think, very, very well. But it is part of the game.
Oh, absolutely. I would say it is part of the game. Yeah, funny enough, we had one of our clients the other day send us a whole spreadsheet of all the leads and the reasons they wanted them refunded. and this is, by the way, is a client that's doing really, really well. So they're overall happy. They're so used to working with pay per lead companies. So they sent us this and we're like, you realize Google's not going to refund your leads. They don't do that, right? You paid for the ad inventory. If you have invalid clicks, you can get refunds from that, which is really common in the world of fraud, but certainly not the leads. And then second, if I was trying to get refunds on clicks from Google, I would try to refund all the ones that didn't become leads, not the ones that became leads. And then I thought it wasn't a good enough lead. I would do all the, what about the 75% of clicks that never actually become a lead? Can we get a refund for those ones?
Yeah. And disputing that is an enjoyable process. So have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one other factor of pay per lead versus PPC that's commonly considered a strength of pay per lead is the fact that there's not really a management fee, or it seems like there's not a management fee. How would you speak to that?
Again, right, pros and cons to the channel. If I'm in early stages of one, there's this idea that going into PPC is an expensive channel. There's some, that's a fair assessment to a point, but anyone who's tried scaling their outbound, the costs are just a little bit more hidden, right? And so there's just Is it a more expensive channel? Perhaps, but it's a more efficient channel. So one of the things that I'm seeing is, you know, yeah, you have a management fee, but the real question is, what's the value? What are you getting inside of that management fee? If somebody's just going to set up the campaign and let it go, then yeah, you should expect to have a lower management fee. But if somebody's going to be incredibly hands-on, be essentially a part of your organization in being strategic and making recommendations, keeping eyes on the road, and also looking at your data each and every month and utilizing that data and its outcomes in order to train the platform to get smarter, to ultimately drive you better leads over time, then that has a lot more value. And so you have to really assess what you're getting, because not all PPC agencies are created equal. I tell people all the time that we're by far not the cheapest, but we're not the most expensive. But I believe we bring the absolute most value to the table because of how we approach management. So it's something to consider. And PPL, you don't have that. And so again, weighing the various pros and cons is going to help you determine which channel makes the most sense for you and where you're at in your business at this point.
Yeah. Oh, and I think one place where that's pronounced, like let's just say you're going to spend $1,000 a month, you're not going to want to work on your own PPC and pay for a management fee and pay for the ad spend, right? Because it's ultimately the management fee is just going to be too much compared to the ad spend, and you won't get the results you're looking for. Versus with pay per lead, you're still just kind of like, it's not like there's not a management fee. It's just the management fee comes on a per lead basis, right? They are buying leads wholesale. They're selling them retail. It's just like, like to say that pay per lead doesn't have a management fee would be for me to be a flipper and buy purely from wholesalers and say that I don't have any acquisition cost for my marketing. Right. That's not true, right? The acquisitions cost is the wholesale fee paid to the wholesaler. And oftentimes that's a lot more than what it would be for your marketing acquisitions costs if you were going to do it yourself. Yeah. But if you're going to buy one property, is it worth you spinning up this whole marketing machine? Probably not, right? It's worth just you buying the one.
That's another place that the same type of model exists, right? As flippers become more prolific and they handle more properties, it doesn't make sense for them to pay the markup for a wholesaler to sell them a property. It makes more sense for them to generate their own. And it's a very similar put. I think you hit the nail on the head. Putting it in that context makes it more relatable to investors, because that's something that's like, oh yeah, it makes more sense on scale that I'm going to run my own marketing and generate my own properties than buying them from a wholesaler and paying a markup. So very, very similar.
Well, let's talk about where this goes wrong though. Because I think where a lot of people go with this though is they're like, well, no, I'm actually not paying a markup because I can see the pay per lead bids in my market are X dollars. And you're telling me my cost per lead might be Y dollars. That's actually more than the pay per lead. So why would I pay a management fee and have to go for this more midterm strategy instead of a short-term easy in, easy out strategy and go through like this extra effort of having it be on my brand if pay per lead's ultimately cheaper? Yeah, I can answer the question if you'd like.
Oh no. If I'm being frank, you kind of were like digitizing there for a second, so I maybe missed a few of the things that you were saying. So go ahead and answer the question, and I'll provide the color commentary.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it comes back to what you had talked about before. See, pay-per-lead companies, they have you talked about the value of a management fee, the value of optimizing for the lead quality and understanding all those details. Pay-per-lead companies don't actually have, like, you could have the smartest marketers, but just by nature of the model, you have some natural difficulty in optimizing. The reason being, they don't know what happens with your leads when they go into your system. What they know is how many of them get disputed, right? So what do they optimize towards? They optimize towards non-disputed leads, which is a really fair thing to optimize towards, right?
Right.
That said, if we take something like, let's just say we're talking opportunities, right? If you take a quote unquote opportunity, I can tell you right now, there's some keywords we have where it takes 12 opportunities to get a contract. There's some where it takes 2 opportunities to get a contract.
Right.
To a pay per lead company, those look the same because we have that data kind of full funnel from our clients. We can understand on a deeper level. So I think where people will go wrong with PPC versus pay per lead is on paper. They're like, well, for the same kind of lead, it's going to be a different cost. But in reality, you look at like how many leads people might be having per deal, and it varies a ton. I also want to be extremely clear here that this is like, it totally varies based on what the pay per lead company is doing for their marketing, right? People just assume that, okay, if I buy leads from whatever pay per lead company, that I'm always going to get the same thing. I met someone like 3 or 4 years ago when I had first joined the Collective Genius. And they basically said, like, the only marketing I've ever done is buying leads from this one pay per lead company. I bought 7 leads and I did 7 deals. And that was like their whole marketing strategy and what had worked for them. Now, I don't know what they're doing now. It might be that that's still going for them. It might be not that it's not. But part of it is like pay-per-lead companies get their leads a lot of different ways, right? They do SEO usually, and that's kind of the foundation. They're going to be doing PPC. They're going to be doing Facebook ads. They're actually even going to be buying leads from other pay-per-lead companies because you see pay-per-lead companies, they have like their own wholesale platforms where if they're unable to sell a lead, they send the lead there, and then other pay-per-lead companies pick them up and then sell them to their audience. And they might not know every piece of how those things are generated. That's where, like, I saw some people like angrily talking on Facebook about how they called someone and they said, well, I just got an email and I clicked the thing that said get an offer on your home. And then now all these people are calling me. Right. And then there's the element of like, is there exclusivity in those leads, right? Are they going to multiple people? Could that be like changing it? And some companies will tell you like they're completely exclusive, but then, and maybe they are, but then also they're buying leads from somebody else who isn't completely exclusive, right? So out of their control, then it's creating these other problems, right? The problem is like,
hear that actually.
Yeah, the problem is a misalignment of incentives. I think at the end of the day, where it's like their incentive is to get a lead that at least hits the quality threshold and sell it at the highest cost possible so they can have margin. And your incentive is to get deals, but they don't even know when you're having success. So it's a little bit all over the place, but that's why people see like such these varying results. And you'll see some people that do really well. It could be that like pay-per-lead was awesome because they didn't have that much competition. And sometimes it's like undervalued and you're able to get leads from SEO that, because the pay-per-lead companies that built up their SEO, they don't stop doing SEO. You can't really stop doing SEO. So they might be getting those leads without any incremental effort. So even though you're only bidding $100, they're going to sell them to you because that's what they can sell them for. And it's better than not selling them at all.
$20.
Yeah. Or maybe in PPC, it would cost them $200 to generate those leads, but they're not doing PPC right now. They're doing SEO and you're the highest bidder. But then, maybe the bid's $600 and then now they're adding in Facebook ads and they're doing some email marketing and all these things. And then you get like this huge variance of lead quality. It's because all these different channels that they're using have different quality levels, especially depending on how they're done. And they're setting expectations with the sellers differently on like making it very much an offer thing versus like, let us help you fix your situation or whatever the case is. Right. So at the end of the day, a lot of people find that they just have really poor close rates, even for the same quote unquote quality from pay-per-lead, like for the number of seller leads, because there is no optimization towards down funnel quality. It's only optimization towards quality issues that cause disputes.
Right. Yeah. Not optimizing for outcome, but optimizing. Yeah. As you said. And I would say that in general, the conversations that I have with people who are invested in PPL, their close rates are they're lower than what we typically see among our client base. Not drastically, but they're lower, and so that is something to consider as well. And I think that again, when talking about value, right, and what a properly managed agency can bring to the table. We're dealing with platforms that are machine learning. And if you don't give them feedback, they can't learn and they can't improve and they can't drive better results over time. So that's one of the benefits of understanding what the outcome of your leads is, and then taking that outcome and feeding it back up into the algorithm and up into the platform to help it learn and get better. So, I know you talk a lot about the lead sculpting that we do, the closed loop data reporting, some things like that help train the algorithm. But again, that's not the immediate hit that you addressed in the beginning of the podcast. That's more of your, it's a little bit longer term play. It's going to take a few months to really get that feedback loop going and start changing the course, if you will, of Google running, Google driving leads for you on a PPC campaign that you're managing.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, I think that's just undervalued overall. Those more long-term strategies.
I think it's understood.
Understood, but still, it's like I feel like far too many people just want to make the best short-term gain. I mean, I think to be excited in what you do as a business owner, I mean, you have to wake up each day and think, what am I going to do today that's going to make it so that my life's going to be better tomorrow? And doing that consistently over time is what gets you where you actually want to go, right? And what you never want to do is put in more effort today to just get where you were yesterday, right? That's like, for most people, that's just absolutely not where they want to be. But then they just keep on running in these circles that get them there because they're not investing into those long-term things that really compound, right? What are things that compound? Company IP. That's going to be like closed loop feedback systems, et cetera. What are things that compound? SEO, right? Another thing that compounds, brand. Right. So all these aspects of these things, you look at the most successful business owners, they look back at the things that compound the most in their business as the things that were the most successful moves that they ever made. Because at some point they woke up in the morning and they decide, I'm going to make the right decisions today that are going to put me in a better position 5 years from now. Not just what gets me through this month. But I think it's so hard to start thinking in that mindset when there's like day-to-day fires in the business and all that kind of stuff. And then you're just kind of scarcely thinking, how do I get the most leads? How do I get them as quickly as possible?
Yeah. Well, it's like Ben Hardy, 10X is easier than 2X.
Yeah. Well, 10X over, people underestimate what they could do over a long period of time and overestimate what they could do over a short period of time, right? Like often that 10X, just takes a little bit longer, but if you're always shooting for 2X, then you just don't get there. So I think that's totally relevant. And then the last thing that I think is important that I want to touch on is that these are not mutually exclusive channels. Probably the single thing that bothers me the most is how often people are comparing these two channels as if you have to pick one. One of our best clients originally came to me 2 years ago. What he said is, I'm on every single pay per lead platform that exists. I'm in like 40 counties across 5 states, and I'm the highest bidder on every single platform in all of those counties across all those states. In many cases, over $1,000 per lead. He's like, I just can't get him to get me more leads. Can we add more leads to the puzzle? And I think that's how a lot of the higher volume investors think. And I think it's a good thing that anything that you can do that's profitable, do it. But keep in mind that those items, when added together, will equal a greater sum than what you could get from just one of them individually, right? So some people, when they have a really scarce budget, you do have to kind of choose between one or the other. But I think a lot of our highest level clients, they're just kind of rolling with the punches as they come along and just constantly optimizing for what's working better.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's just like, if you're investing in crypto or the stock market, you dollar cost average. That's how you mitigate risk and get the best returns. It's the same thing here. You have to be smart about where you're putting your money and have some in various channels. And over time, that's going to level itself out.
Yeah, I think a great analogy goes back to Jesus. Sorry to bring religion or Jesus into this, right? Yeah. But what did he say? A wise man. Was it Jesus that said that? This is in the Bible. I know that much. I think it was Jesus. A wise man built his house upon the rock. The foolish man built his house upon the sand, right? And if we look at what is a rock, and what is sand? A rock is brand, owned strategies, controlled IP. Sand is what works today, but come that storm in the future, might not work.
Right.
I guess kind of where I'm at is you need to have like that rock as your foundation. If you think about it, like marketing kind of is the foundation of a business. Nothing happens before the marketing. Nobody else has a job in a business if the marketing doesn't happen on some level. So it is the foundation of the business.
And I'm kind of your marketing spend is for the company you want, not the company you have.
Yes, that's a great point as well, right? So you kind of have to like build with that in mind. So I guess the strategy I'm a fan of is like build your house on a rock and then build your guest house on the sand. And then you kind of like have the advantages of each, right? The sand was easier to build on, and you kind of have that paper lead on the side, and sometimes it goes, sometimes it gets washed away. But I know far too many people that built their business on paper lead. And then what does it take? It takes the company that they're relying on to change the way that they're doing their strategies, to change their policies. It takes another person to come into their market and bid higher, deciding that they value those leads more. It takes any of those things, and your whole marketing foundation's gone.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, that's why, these channels aren't mutually exclusive. You can have your own owned PPC campaign, build your brand, and purchase some leads here and there from a PPL company. It's I think it's the best way to hedge all your bets and cover your bases.
Yeah, I think I think where paper lead's really good is for scaling to whatever the volume that your acquisitions team needs is. Because it's the easiest thing to just like turn on and get more leads when you're under on how many appointments you need, and turn off when you're hitting your numbers. Right. But I guess the difference between a business that does that and one that doesn't is just where's the foundation. And not everybody can afford to build a house on a rock right at the beginning, right? So that those are kind of the situations where I think of paper lead as being awesome, right? You already have your firm foundation, and then now you're adding this supplementally as like an easy to add and remove thing. But you have to think, if that went away tomorrow, would I be okay? And right. As long as that's true, you're good. Or people, sometimes when you're just starting your business, you need to take a little risk for a period of time in order to get to a place where you have that firm foundation, right? So if you don't have the budget to, build your house on the rock, then you can start out with just buying from paper lead, and then like shift to a more stable long-term strategy as soon as you can.
100%. Yeah. I talked to a guy in Boston, similar to what you said earlier there. Talked to a guy in Boston. He's like, I've got 20 grand to make this work, or I'm going back to a W-2. And I said, here, let me introduce you to somebody at a PPL company, because that's going to be your quickest short-term strategy to build up some quick reserves to keep you afloat.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's exactly what some people need. All right, I hope we haven't been too biased. Are there any sides of the debate? Are there any sides of the debate that you think you think haven't been addressed enough?
No, I would say, I think one of the biggest frustrations I have is just some of the lack of understanding or misinformation that exists in our industry, real estate investing industry. I think people understand AI a little bit better with the emergence of ChatGPT and some things like that. I think it's important to realize that, the reason it says at the bottom of the page that ChatGPT doesn't know anything since 2020 is because it hasn't been fed that data, right? If you look into what it took to get ChatGPT to where it is, the amount of sheer volume of data and the amount of energy that it actually required, which could, I think, power like 150,000 average homes for 3 months, is how much energy it took. But when you look at that and you realize how much data it takes to train an algorithm like that, apply that to this. Again, that's one of the things that gets me. People let their PPC run with no feedback to the algorithm, and then they wonder why over time results get worse. It's just because, like a child without any instruction or training, it's Lord of the Flies before you know it, right? So getting that feedback to the platform to improve your results, I think, is something that's incredibly important and misunderstood and definitely undervalued.
Yeah, and impossible with paper lead, right? So I totally, I'm totally with you on that. Thank you for taking your time today, Noah, to discuss this with me. This was an awesome conversation. For everybody listening, I will see you next week.